Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with extra history. Tonight we're going to Ireland with the Irish Easter Rising. We'll just call it the Easter Rising, okay? So yeah, Ireland, not like an occupation. Well, we're about to see those seeds of rebellion, which is ironically what this episode's called. Well, let's take a look back at this one, huh? Be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's check it out.
Dublin, Ireland, April 24th,
Sorry.
1916.
Keep forgetting to
Easter
check.
Monday dawns bright as Dubliners, both Catholic and Protestant, rouse themselves after a day of rest and worship. But
Okay.
some have barely slept at all, as they've spent the holiday making feverish, last-minute preparations. Now, they gather their courage, faith, and guns, and converge on Dublin Castle. As the party rushes the gate, the castle garrison is minimal and unprepared for an attack.
Sure,
The lone
guy.
policeman on duty, an Irish Catholic who is unarmed, attempts to stop them, but to no avail. An attacker guns him down as he
Ooh.
tries to close the iron gate. But by chance, the British
Matthew
Undersecretary for Ireland, Sir Matthew Nathan, sees this happen. So he, along with a few soldiers, scramble to the gate, slamming it shut and locking it as bullets zip by. Then they brace for a siege. For this is no isolated attack. All
boy.
across the city, armed men and women are ambushing policemen and officials, taking up sniper perches, and raising barricades. The sleepy holiday is giving way to a revolution, an Easter Rising.
Roll the title. Off we go.
This episode is brought to you by the incredible value proposition that is the Curiosity Stream Nebula Bundle. Seriously, so much stuff under 15 bucks, I still honestly don't believe it. But more on that awesomeness after the episode. The Easter Rising is one of the most crucial events in modern Irish history. A rebellion that had been brewing for decades and sparked a period of conflict more ferocious and dynamic than anything seen in over a century. In fact, a bare 6 years after Nathan tried to close the gates of Dublin Castle to the unrest brewing outside, Ireland would be a republic independent from the United Kingdom. Now, it's easy to
6
draw a
years.
straight line from the Easter Rising to independence, to tell the tale of a popular uprising against English misrule, full of tragedy, heroism, and defiance. But while this series will talk about those things, we'll
Right,
also
right. We still
discuss
gotta start
the
from the
gritty
beginning.
realities of how the Rising came about, what happened when the shooting started, and what changed when it stopped. All of which defy the straightforward narrative of the Republic's founding. Because, in truth, the birth of a nation is never simple. While the
Usually true. I mean you think about it, nothing's really simple. Like if you look back at history, sometimes it might seem straightforward, but truth is usually stranger than fiction, as they say. Might as well see what happened that caused this rising.
history of Ireland's relationship to Great Britain is complicated. The roots of the Easter Rising
Sense.
can be traced back to the rebellion of 1798, when a group
Man.
called the United Irishmen staged an
Far
uprising
back.
against British rule. While this would-be revolution, which included a mixture of Presbyterian Protestants and Roman Catholics, was defeated, the pressures it created paved the way for two new Acts of Union. The laws that bound Ireland to Britain, just like an earlier Act of Union had bound Scotland and England. Chiefly, these abolished the Irish Parliament in favor of Irish representation in the British Parliament, which some hoped would increase Roman Catholic rights and allow them to serve in government. But progress toward greater
Yeah.
Irish autonomy was slow. While there were still no uprisings to the extent of 1798, the Great Famine of the 1840s, which you can learn about after this episode in our series here, had a profound impact. With hunger killing 1 million Irish and forcing roughly another 2 million to immigrate, the famine both changed the
Yeah,
face of
say-
Ireland and exposed the
Either
stark
leave or die,
limitations
really.
and the
Sheesh.
frequent cruelty of British policy. A series of land reforms followed as efforts were made to stop
blame
the
'em.
disaster
I
from
would be
occurring a
pissed too.
second time. By the 1870s, there were increased calls for Irish Home Rule, an idea that Ireland would practice self-governance within the United Kingdom, rather than complete independence. This became the mainstream movement among Irish nationalists in the late 1800s, and there was some progress. Irish members of Parliament introduced two Home Rule bills in 1886 and 1893. But while both failed to get past the House of Lords, a third attempt succeeded in 1914.
1914.
That was because, in the 1910 general election, the pro-Home Rule Irish Parliamentary Party ended up with a powerful voting bloc. Now, we don't have enough time in this series to get into the entire tangled yarn basket of Irish politics and factionalism in the early 20th century. But broadly
Probably for the
speaking,
best.
there were two opposed groups. The Unionists, who were content with Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, and the Nationalists, who wanted some form of independence from Great Britain. The nationalists originally believed in peaceful change, but by the early 1900s, a range of nationalist organizations advocated an uprising.
There he
But
goes.
even among these militants, visions
True,
of
true.
independence differed. Some wanted Ireland to leave the United Kingdom but remain in the Commonwealth and retain George V as king, while others wanted a complete break and the creation of an
Actually
Irish
still part
republic.
of the Commonwealth,
There were
but I'm
also
not sure.
debates about what should be done with the vehemently unionist north of the island. Should it be incorporated or remain part of the UK? And many disagreed over the
Sure,
role
as they
of the
say.
Roman Catholic Church after separation and whether the new country should adopt the socialist or even communist ideas sweeping Europe. Then, on the other side of that divided divide, the thought of home
Another
rule
one.
caused unrest among Irish Unionists, especially in the north, where Protestantism and Unionism went hand in hand. Irish Protestants feared that even limited independence would result in the erosion of their culture or a purge at the hands of the nationalists. To
Yes.
combat this, Irish Unionists
The Ulster
formed a
Volunteer Force.
paramilitary organization, the Ulster Volunteer Force, or UVF. Within months, there were over 100,000 members willing to take up arms and defend their Britishness, whether the actual British government wanted them to or not. For instance, on the 25th of April 1914, the UVF successfully smuggled almost 25,000 rifles into Ulster. Predictably enough, the existence of this large Protestant militia worried Irish nationalists, who responded by forming their own paramilitary army, the Irish Volunteers. It seemed the board was being set for civil war, but as so
Yeah, I'll be honest. If I heard like this was going on, like obviously they didn't, or maybe they did, considering the word smuggled. I don't know. At that point, I would be like, okay, how about we just work this out before we start shooting each other? But apparently not. Anyway,
often's been the case throughout history, just as conflict seemed inevitable, external events overturned the playing
let me
pieces.
guess, World War One.
In 1914, an archduke died in
there it
Sarajevo,
goes.
and Britain became embroiled in the First World War. Hundreds of thousands of Irishmen, Protestants and Catholics, nationalists and Unionists, put aside their differences to enlist in the British Army. The UVF signed
the
up in
best.
droves, forming an entire army division that would go on to fight across the Western Front. And with the war seemingly diffusing the tensions at home rule went to the back burner. But not everyone shifted focus. For while many Irishmen supported the British war effort, some nationalists saw
sense.
a world war as the perfect opportunity to strike.
Basically a
Quote,
cover.
Ireland, July 26, 1914. In broad daylight, a
Sorry,
ship pulls up to
Pop's
the
talking.
docks, met by a
Okay.
group of Irish men and women equipped with wheelbarrows and carts. Among them is Countess Markovich, the first woman to be elected to the British Parliament. Under her direction and the other leaders of the group, the ship starts unloading its cargo, 1,500 Mauser rifles. Markovich and those assisting her are Irish nationalists. With the Irish Unionist UVF now armed, thanks to their own gun-running operation, the nationalists are trying to keep up. But the news of guns being taken away in wheelbarrows spread quickly, and police and soldiers mobilized to halt the illegal drop-off. A crowd gathers shouting, someone throws a punch, and a brawl ensues.
we're off.
Amidst the confusion, most of the guns make it ashore, disappearing under floorboards and into attics to be retrieved later. The Irish Volunteers were now armed. A revolt was simmering, and there was one group determined to make it boil over. The Irish Republican Brotherhood, or IRB, had formed in 1858 as a secretive, oath-bound fraternal organization dedicated to creating an Irish republic. It was one of the main backers of the Irish Volunteers, though it didn't fully control them, and was advocating for an armed uprising. And while rebellion was generally approved of, senior individuals of the IRB found themselves at odds with each other over the specifics. Some believed the time was not yet right for a rising, while others wished to press ahead. And unbeknownst to much of the IRB, a small militant faction within its own ranks, calling itself the Military Council, had tasked itself with planning the rebellion. The council kept these designs secret, not only from the authorities, but from other nationalists who might seek to delay it. Distrust and uncertainty were rife. But this potential uprising was fraught with risk. British military power was overwhelming, even with troops stripped for the war. So some decided it would be wise to even the odds by winning some foreign backing. And now that Germany was at war with Britain, the country seemed like the perfect ally for the nationalist movement, and courting assistance from the Kaiser became imperative. To that end, Irish nationalist and former British diplomatic consul Sir Roger Casement was dispatched in secret to negotiate with the Germans in New York and Berlin. If he was successful, German arms and ammunition would flood Ireland, and German soldiers would land in the west of the country, then march on Dublin amid an open rebellion. So as Irish volunteer fighters took their rifles from hidden lofts, they were preparing not just to strike a blow for Ireland, but also for a German victory in the First World War. And if you'd like...
But then again, with how, the whole world, First World War ended, you could see what happens, I'm just saying. Well, we'll see that in the second part. Till then, thanks for watching. See ya.